Hello and welcome back, everyone. So we're going to continue with the Skyline in this episode. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a background image. And so you probably don't have one yet, so make sure you just check this box here and then add image. And I just Googled, I think I just Googled Skyline actually for the inspiration for this video. But specifically the one I grabbed is the Manhattan, New York skyline. So just find that online. And you don't have to use the exact same one. As long as the buildings are similar in the picture you find, that should be good enough. So now when you add it, you're probably not going to see it right away. And that's because these typically only show up if you're in orthographic view, and you have to be in either the front view or the right view. And so you can use 1 or 3 on the numpad to toggle between those. So now I'm going to scale this up and move it. And there is a pretty strong perspective effect on this image. I'm going to hit A and then H to hide everything. You can see like the base of this building is a lot closer than like the top of this building. Or I mean, I guess the base of any building is closer than the top just because of the way the angles would work out. So we're not going to try to match this up perfectly because these are so far from the camera that we're not going to get the perspective. Like the shapes just aren't going to line up. I don't really have a good explanation for why that is, but I just know that that's the case. So this one matches up decently. So I think I'm just going to leave that one alone for now. Now this one, it's pretty clear that I made these parts extruded out way too far. So I'm just going to Alt-H and then grab this guy. And this will be easier if we can get exact side views on this. So just make sure you're in orthographic view. And then I'm going to hit Z and then B for box select, and I just want this whole column of vertices, and I'm just going to pull it out like that. And same thing on this side. So just look at it directly across. And this will be a little bit easier if we hide the buildings behind it. So we can go into object mode, select those, and H to hide. And actually, because I was using the global transform orientation right there, you can see I totally just warped the buildings. That was a pretty stupid mistake on my part. So we're going to have to undo that. And there's a few ways we could get around this. What I'm just going to do is rotate the whole thing so that it matches up with the grid. 7 for top view, and get that a little bit more precise. That looks good. Alright, so now we can do 3, and I'm just going to hide the background image. And the reason I'm using the box select on this is because typically we could alt right click to get a whole ring, but on these weird edges that actually doesn't work too well. We would just have to do more manual selection of vertices. So box select, move that out, and 1 for front view. Alright, that's looking a little bit better. Alt-H and 3. We enable the background image. And it still looks like it's a little bit too thin. So that's an easy fix. Select all the vertices, S, Y, and then SX. Now I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and actually I guess I'll do it in object mode so that the actual pivot point rotates. That'll make it easier to line up in Unity if we want to rotate it. And now I think it's a little bit too wide, so I can do S, Shift Z to scale on the X and Y. And I think that warped it again, just slightly. So we could do local, and actually that won't work either. Unless we set it to the active element. Even then it won't work. Interesting. Alright, so we just got to do this. S, Shift Z, RZ, rotate it back, Alt H, and enable the background, 3, H. Okay, that's close enough for me. And so while we're at it, why don't we create some of these other buildings? So this one and this one are almost exactly the same. So I'm just going to duplicate like that. And then I want to bring this point down. So I'm going to select that point and then Alt right click to get this whole ring. SZ0, Shift A, add a circle. And I want it to be right here. So I'm going to put the cursor there. Cursor to active, Shift A circle, scale it in. Now it's scaling toward the center of the world, which is kind of annoying, so I'm going to hit comma and then scale in. And now it scales relative to the bounding box center. E to extrude. And let's look at the reference. So it's got kind of a, I don't know, maybe like a 20-foot tall cylinder right there. And then above that, there's like a hemisphere. So relative to the building, maybe it's like that. Control L, Control N. E to extrude on the Z-axis. And it just dawned on me that I haven't been actually screencasting the keys, so I apologize for that. I'm not starting over though. Okay. And then F to complete that face. Now I think that building should be a little bit taller. Maybe not. This will need to be more rounded. So I'm going to break that into a separate object and add a subdivision surface. And these staircases, so there's one that goes toward the camera, and then one that kind of goes left relative to the camera. So toward the camera here, and then I guess this guy's rotated 90 degrees. Other way. RZ minus 90. No, maybe it's 45 degrees. RZ 45. RZ minus 45. There we go. That looks a little bit more like what we see in the picture. And it looks like the back part is extruded out there. So I'm going to hit C and paint over these faces. Extrude. Alt H to unhide the buildings. So now we've got that, that, and that. Do we want to continue with these? These are pretty easy because they're just like this one, this one, this one, this one. They're pretty much just boxes. And this one seems like it's a little bit rounded there. So why don't we do that one next? And for that, I think I'm just going to take a ring off of this, grab this whole ring here, move it down on the z-axis, set that to exactly 0. Vertices. Now, in the picture, it looks like it kind of curves around like that way, and then maybe this way. So why don't we just turn on proportional editing, so that's O, G, X. And we want this to have probably the sphere fall off. No. Sharp. That's more like what we want. And then I'm just going into top view, and I'm just going to bring this out a little bit further. So I don't know if I'm seeing that correctly, but to me that looks like the shape that should be. So if we look at it from this angle, we've got a little bit of a curve there, like that, and then it's fairly straight here. Maybe that should be a little bit more curved. So for that, I will use the sphere. Now I'm just going to take this building, and since I was in edit mode that whole time, these are actually part of the same object. So I'm going to hit Ctrl L, P, and enter. And then the pivot point is now over here, so I'm going to do Ctrl Alt Shift C, and that will move the origin to the geometry, like that. And then rotate it a little bit. Now, for this piece and this piece, I'm going to hit G and then G again, and that will move it along the line, like so. And as I mentioned before, there is a strong perspective effect on this, so we're not going to match them up perfectly. But if we can just get it relatively close, that's really all I'm going for here. So we got that front shape. Now we want this extruded part down here, and then there's also an extruded ceiling there. Control R, scroll up, SX. E to extrude, S to scale in. We're going to want to scale it mostly on the local x-axis. And it's not perfect, but we got the general shape. So I'm going to call that building done. Now we've got these over here, so I'm just going to add a cube, move that out. And these should really be part of the same object, so I'm going to go ahead and apply the subdivision surface and then shift right click and ctrl J to join those. Now they'll move together. Z, vertex selection mode. And these might be the same building, but I can't tell, so they're separate buildings in my book. And it kind of looks like this building is leaning to the side, but again, I think that's just the perspective effect, so we're not going to try to mimic that. And this building is just far away. Like really far away. So to mimic that, we're just going to scale it down quite a bit. And I want to keep the bottom perfectly level on the ground. So I'm not scaling it on the z-axis, I'm just moving the top down and then scaling on all the other axes. S, Shift Z, scale in. And duplicate that. Okay, so we're still missing this building right here, which is pretty similar to this building. So I'm going to hit A and hide everything. Now, what are the main differences here? This one obviously has this kind of pyramid style ceiling. And what else? This part looks a lot like this part. I suspect that this wraps around the back, but I can't tell from the picture. So I'm just going to rotate this 180 degrees. Actually, are there any... There is this staircase here going to the right away from the camera. So why don't we rotate this 90 degrees? Yeah, that'll work. And it looks like it's extruded a little bit right there. So I think this whole piece needs to go up. Vertex selection mode. So I'm just going to move this whole guy up like that. And then paint over these faces. And extrude them a tiny bit. And Control Tab for vertex selection, Z for wireframe. I want to hide the building in the back. And then we're going to bring this whole thing down like that, multiple times. And I'm going to delete the vertex on the top. So now we have this open ceiling. Alt right click to get the ring, F to create a face, E to extrude up. Right click to leave it where it is, and then scale it in. E to extrude. And repeat. And let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. There is this squarish building down here. It's kind of hard to tell what's going on in this corner. Every time I try to zoom in, it scrolls to the next picture. So I'm just going to replicate these buildings over here. RZ, something like that. Now we need to move it way out away from the camera. 3. Now I'm going to hit 5 to change this to perspective. And so we're going to see something more like this in Unity. And it's jumping pretty far with each scroll. So what I can do is Control, and then what is it? There's a way to, I thought it was Control and then drag up with the mouse. Control. Oh, there it is. Okay, so Control and then middle click the mouse wheel and then pan in like that, and that makes it a little bit easier to accurately position the camera. I think we need to bring this in a little bit. Initially I wanted to texture these in this video, but we're already at 22 minutes just from adding more to the geometry. So I definitely have to break this into another chunk. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoy creating content like this. I hope you learn at least something from it. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.